The stage lights were blinding, but nothing compared to the electricity in the audience's anticipation. Everyone had come to see the usual spectacle, big performances, flashy acts, and perhaps a few surprises, but no one expected what was about to happen. Simon Cowell, the notoriously unflappable judge, sat in his chair with his arms crossed, ready to critique yet another routine. The camera zoomed in, capturing every wrinkle of skepticism on his face. And then, a hush fell over the crowd as a young boy stepped onto the stage alone, calm, and carrying a simple guitar case. The air shifted. You could almost hear the world holding its breath. At first glance, he looked ordinary, just another contestant chasing a dream. But the moment he opened his mouth, every expectation vanished. His voice, raw and haunting, poured through the theater with a power that made Simon Cowell's jaw literally drop. Gasps echoed around the room as the audience felt something rare, genuine, soul-stirring music. Behind the boy's eyes, there was a story that resonated far beyond the stage. This wasn't just a performance, it was a journey of survival, resilience, and love. His name was Adrian, the hidden son of the legendary Filipino musician Freddie Aguilar. Nobody knew he existed, not even the die-hard fans who followed every move of Freddie's career. Adrian had grown up far from the spotlight, in a small town with limited opportunities, raised by his mother who had kept his father's identity a secret to protect him from the pressures of fame. Music was his escape, his teacher, and his best friend. Every chord he played was a reflection of his struggles, the late nights practicing in dimly lit rooms, the times he had to borrow instruments, the moments when self-doubt threatened to silence him forever. The journey to this stage hadn't been easy. Adrian had faced rejection after rejection, competitions that dismissed him, and whispers that he was merely riding on a famous surname he barely knew. Yet he persevered. Every note he sang carried the weight of his life, the sacrifices of his mother, and the unspoken connection to the father he had never met. He thought about the countless nights lying awake, imagining a world where people would listen not just to his music, but to his heart. As the opening chords filled the room, Simon leaned forward, eyes widening in disbelief. He had seen thousands of performers, but none had captured raw emotion like this. The audience sat in stunned silence, every soul leaning in closer, waiting for the next note. Adrian's voice climbed, soared, and wrapped around every listener, creating an intimacy so powerful it felt like he was singing directly to each person's own struggles and dreams. Some were crying, some were frozen, unable to move or speak. Simon, known for his sharp critiques and rarely impressed demeanor, simply froze. For a moment, there were no words, just awe. What made Adrian's story even more compelling wasn't just his talent, it was the bravery to show up. To face a panel of judges who could make or break his future, to step on a stage with millions watching, and to sing the story of his life without fear. And in that vulnerability, he connected with everyone in the room. He sang about hope, about longing for acceptance, about the bittersweet journey of growing up in the shadows, and about finding courage when no one is watching. When the last note lingered in the air, there was silence and almost unbearable pause as if the world itself was deciding how to react. And then, the theater erupted. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, and crying at the same time. Simon Cowell, ever the critic, finally found words, though his voice shook slightly with emotion. That was extraordinary. I've never heard anything like that. His usual composure had vanished, replaced by pure respect. Adrian had done more than perform, he had left a permanent mark on everyone who witnessed it. After the show, social media exploded. Clips of Adrian's performance went viral within hours, trending worldwide. Messages poured in from strangers inspired by his courage, moved by his honesty, and amazed by his talent. Yet amidst the global attention, Adrian remained humble. His gratitude went first to his mother, who had sacrificed everything for him, and to his father, whose legacy had given him the language of music even if they had never met. His message to the world was simple: no matter where you come from, no matter how hidden your story, never let fear stop you from shining. By the end of the night, Adrian had not just stunned Simon Cowell, he had inspired millions. His story became a reminder that true talent can't be hidden, that courage resonates louder than fame, and that sometimes the most powerful performances come from hearts that have known struggle. And while the world celebrated him, Adrian knew this was just the beginning. There would be more songs, more stages, and more moments to touch lives. But one thing was certain, he had shown the world and himself that he belonged. So, if this story moved you, inspired you, or made your heart race with hope, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for more stories of extraordinary people changing the world with courage and talent. Because in every hidden corner, there's a star waiting to shine. The crowd buzzed with excitement, the kind of energy that makes your heart race before a life-changing moment. Simon Cowell, sitting in his iconic chair, scanned the stage with his usual mix of skepticism and boredom. He'd seen it all, or so he thought. But tonight, the rules were about to change. From backstage, a young boy emerged, carrying nothing but a small guitar and an air of quiet confidence. No flashy lights, no entourage, just a boy who seemed to hold a storm inside him. The camera zoomed in on Simon's eyes, already narrowing, but something was different. Something in that moment made even him pause. This boy was Adrian, the hidden son of the legendary Freddie Aguilar, a fact unknown to most. Growing up far from the glitz of fame, Adrian's life had been anything but easy. Raised by his mother in a small town, he learned the meaning of perseverance early. Music was his sanctuary. Every morning he would practice for hours in a tiny room with peeling paint, his fingers bruised and calloused, perfecting songs that told stories of love, loss, and longing. But he didn't play for fame. He played because music had been his lifeline when the world seemed too heavy, his way to speak when words failed him. He had faced rejection before, countless auditions where people doubted him, whispered that he was just Freddie Aguilar's son. But Adrian carried a quiet determination. Tonight, he wasn't performing for a judge or an audience, he was performing for every person who had ever felt invisible, unheard, or underestimated. And as he strummed the first chord, the theater fell into a captivated silence. His voice began soft, almost fragile, but it grew in strength, weaving emotion into every note. Simon Cowell, known for rarely showing vulnerability, suddenly found himself unable to look away. His usual critiques vanished into thin air as the music enveloped him, each lyric revealing the struggles of a boy who had lived in the shadows yet carried a legacy in his heart. The audience, too, was spellbound. Some wiped away tears, others simply sat frozen, caught in the weight of raw talent and heartfelt storytelling. Adrian's song was more than a performance, it was a journey. He sang about growing up without a father he barely knew, about the sacrifices of his mother, about nights filled with doubt and mornings filled with hope. Every note was infused with authenticity, every word a reflection of real pain and courage. And yet, there was joy too, the joy of finally standing on a stage where his voice could be heard, where his story could touch lives. When the final chord rang out, the silence that followed was almost unbearable. Simon Cowell's usual stern expression had completely melted away. For a moment, he simply stared, mouth slightly open, as if trying to process what he had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause began, swelling into a thunderous ovation. Simon finally spoke, voice husky with emotion, I've never heard anything like that. That was extraordinary. The words, simple as they were, carried immense weight. He had been moved, stunned, frozen, not by theatrics, but by pure talent and courage. After the show, clips of Adrian's performance went viral overnight. People around the world shared his story, inspired by a boy who had risen from obscurity to shine on the world's biggest stage. Yet amidst the fame, Adrian remained humble, always crediting his mother for her unwavering support and acknowledging the influence of his father's music on his life. His message resonated far beyond the music. No matter where you start, no matter how hidden your dreams are, you have the power to rise. Courage will always find a way. By the end of that unforgettable night, Adrian had not only stunned Simon Cowell but had inspired millions. His story reminded the world that talent can't be hidden, that resilience is stronger than fear, and that the most extraordinary moments come from the heart. As the crowd cheered, Adrian knew this was only the beginning. There would be more songs, more stages, and more lives touched by his voice. But the lesson was clear: when you embrace your true self, the world has no choice but to listen. So if Adrian's journey moved you, inspired you, or gave you hope, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to see more stories of ordinary people achieving extraordinary dreams. Because sometimes, the most powerful magic comes from the most unexpected places. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, cameras flashing, the air thick with anticipation. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already ready with his trademark smirk and biting comments. But tonight would be different. Backstage, a young boy adjusted his worn guitar strap, took a deep breath, and stepped into the spotlight. He was small, unassuming, maybe just 16, with messy hair falling into his intense eyes. Nobody knew him. Nobody knew his story. But the moment he opened his mouth, the world would stop. His name was Adrian. He was the hidden son of Freddie Aguilar, a living legend whose music had moved generations. Yet Adrian had grown up in obscurity, raised in a tiny, crowded home by a mother who protected him fiercely. She never wanted the fame or the pressure that came with being the son of a superstar. Adrian's only companions were his guitar, his dreams, and the quiet melodies that filled the empty corners of his room. Music had been his escape, his way to make sense of a world that often seemed unfair and unkind. He had faced rejection countless times. Competitions, auditions, even small local performances, people always saw him as just Freddie Aguilar's son, or worse, overlooked him entirely. But Adrian never gave up. He practiced for hours, perfecting every chord, every note, every lyric until it carried his pain, his hope, his life. And now, standing on the biggest stage of his young life, he was ready to show the world who he really was. The first strum of his guitar was soft, almost timid, but it held something powerful, a promise that this wasn't just another performance. Then he began to sing. His voice was unlike anything the audience had ever heard, raw, emotional, haunting, yet filled with a surprising warmth. Simon Cowell, who had seen thousands of performers, froze. His pen slipped from his hand, his usual poker face gone. Even the audience leaned forward, unable to blink. It was as if Adrian's music reached straight into the soul, pulling every emotion from everyone in the room. But it wasn't just talent that made him extraordinary. It was the story behind the music. As he sang, the lyrics painted his life, growing up without his father, the silent sacrifices of his mother, the nights spent alone with nothing but his dreams. Every note carried a mixture of pain and hope, loneliness and courage. Some audience members cried openly, others sat stunned, unable to move. And Simon Cowell. Simon was speechless. For the first time in his career, he had no words ready. Then came the twist. Mid-song, Adrian's guitar string snapped. A gasp rippled through the audience. In that moment, many would have faltered, but not Adrian. He didn't stop. He continued, even softer now, almost vulnerable, yet his voice grew stronger with every word. He turned a mistake into a triumph, showing the world that true artistry isn't flawless, it's brave. Simon's jaw dropped further. He wasn't just impressed, he was witnessing a young man turning struggle into art before his eyes. When Adrian finally finished, the theater held its breath. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, and then, like an eruption, the audience jumped to their feet. Applause, cheers, even tears filled the room. Simon Cowell, his face still frozen in disbelief, finally found his voice. That was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like that. Every word carried the weight of respect, awe, and shock. Adrian had stunned the world. Outside the stage, social media exploded. Clips of Adrian's performance went viral within hours, trending in multiple countries. Fans shared his story, inspired by a boy who dared to dream and courageously sang his truth. Yet, amidst the attention, Adrian remained humble. He credited his mother for every sacrifice, every lesson, and even his father for unknowingly passing down a musical gift that had shaped his life. His message resonated far beyond music. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, your story matters. Be brave, and the world will listen. By the end of the night, Adrian had done more than stun Simon Cowell, he had inspired millions. His story reminded everyone that true talent can't be hidden, that courage outweighs fear, and that sometimes the most extraordinary voices come from the most unexpected places. As he left the stage, guitar in hand, a single truth remained: the world had finally seen him, but more importantly, Adrian had finally seen himself. So if this story gave you goosebumps, moved your heart, or inspired you to chase your dreams, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to witness more incredible journeys of hidden heroes rising against all odds. Because sometimes, the bravest act is simply daring to be heard. The lights dimmed, and the chatter of the audience faded into a tense silence. Simon Cowell, the man known for his icy stare and sharp critiques, sat in his chair, arms folded, already preparing his standard dismissive comment. But tonight, something felt different. A hush fell as a small figure appeared at the edge of the stage, a teenage boy with messy black hair, worn sneakers, and a simple guitar slung over his shoulder. He paused, looked out into the crowd, and smiled nervously. You could feel the electricity in the air. No one knew his name, no one knew his story, but something about him demanded attention. His name was Adrian, the hidden son of Filipino music legend Freddie Aguilar. Nobody outside his small hometown knew he existed. Growing up, Adrian had been shielded from the pressures of fame, living in a modest home with his mother who worked tirelessly to support him. Music was his escape, his sanctuary, the only way he could express feelings that words couldn't capture. He had spent countless nights practicing under dim lights, his fingers bleeding on the strings, dreaming of a day the world would listen not just to his music, but to his story. The path to this stage had been anything but easy. Auditions rejected him, whispers questioned his talent, and strangers dismissed him as just a celebrity's kid. But Adrian refused to give up. Every note he played carried the weight of every struggle he had endured, the loneliness, the doubt, the small victories that kept him going. Tonight, he wasn't performing for the judges. He was performing for himself, for his mother, and for anyone who had ever felt invisible. The first chord struck, soft and hesitant, yet full of emotion. Then came his voice, rich, haunting, and raw. The audience gasped. Simon Cowell's pen froze mid-air. There was a depth to Adrian's singing, a mix of pain and hope, that penetrated every heart in the room. He sang of love lost, of dreams deferred, of a boy who grew up in the shadow of a legend yet carved his own path through sheer courage. People cried openly, others were motionless, overwhelmed by the intensity of his performance. Simon's signature skepticism melted away, replaced with awe and disbelief. Midway through the song, a sudden, unexpected twist, Adrian's guitar string snapped. A collective gasp echoed across the audience. In that moment, many would falter, but Adrian didn't. He continued, unflinching, letting his voice carry the melody alone. The fragility of the broken string became a symbol of resilience, his voice shining brighter than ever. The audience leaned in, captivated. Simon Cowell's expression had completely changed. He was frozen, stunned, unable to look away. As Adrian reached the climax of his song, his emotions poured out freely. He sang not just about struggles but about hope, perseverance, and the courage to face life's challenges head-on. Every note felt like a story, every lyric like a confession. Tears streamed down faces, some clapping, others whispering words of encouragement. The raw honesty of his performance was impossible to ignore. When the final note lingered in the air, the theater fell silent for a heartbeat, then exploded with applause, cheers, and standing ovations. Simon Cowell, finally regaining his voice, muttered in awe, that was extraordinary. I've never heard anything like that. His words, normally so sharp and critical, were filled with genuine admiration. Adrian had done more than perform, he had moved the world. In the hours that followed, clips of Adrian's performance went viral, inspiring millions. Comments poured in from strangers who felt seen, understood, and motivated by his courage. Yet Adrian remained humble, crediting his mother for her sacrifices and acknowledging his father's legacy as a source of inspiration. His message resonated far beyond music. No matter your background, no matter your struggles, never let fear stop you. Let your heart guide your voice. By the end of the night, Adrian had stunned Simon Cowell, captivated the audience, and touched millions around the globe. His story reminded the world that talent cannot be hidden, courage can overcome fear, and true greatness often comes from the most unexpected places. He walked off the stage that night with his guitar in hand, but more importantly, with the world finally listening to his story. If Adrian's journey gave you goosebumps, moved your heart, or inspired you to pursue your own dreams, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. Because the world is full of hidden talents waiting for their moment, and sometimes, all it takes is courage to step into the light.